Hey there, welcome to the Healy Migraines Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Caesar, and I am a licensed naturopathic doctor, former chronic migraine sufferer, and I have dedicated my life to helping other women with chronic migraines restore their health so that their body no longer generates migraines in the first place. And that's really what we're looking for, right? We certainly don't want to take the medications that we take to get relief, and we don't want to take a fistful of supplements with every meal either, right? We actually want to restore our health so that our body doesn't make the migraines in the first place. So that's what I help women all over the country do. So today we're going to talk about daylight savings time. I am recording this on the Saturday before we do the big switch. So tomorrow morning we're going to wake up and we are going to spring ahead, right? Which means we lose an hour, right? We always generally like falling behind, right? Going back to standard time in the fall because you gain that hour. Tomorrow morning, we're going to lose an hour, right? So I'm talking about this because this is something that's really pertinent to migraine sufferers, right? Because a lot of women with migraines, they dread these time changes, right? Because it's highly likely that they're going to get a migraine due to the time change. And not only the migraine potential that comes along with either moving to daylight savings time or moving back to standard time, but also many women with migraines, they will take longer to adjust to the time change than maybe other people in their life, right? Or what's more typical. So they'll just feel like they're dragging more, what might take other people a day or two to kind of, adjust to the time change. It might take them a week to really feel like they're on the new time schedule. So I wanted to talk about this and kind of explain what's going on here and why this affects migraine sufferers so much. So basically, our wake up time, our bedtime, the time that we eat, right? That's kind of tied to the clock, to the time zone that we're in. And so basically with daylight savings time, going back to standard time in the fall, we're sort of changing our time zone, right? It's almost like we traveled, but we didn't travel. We traveled to a new time zone, but we didn't actually travel, right? We're changing our time zone. So it's similar to like a jet lag type phenomenon. When we change the time zone, it's like, okay, well, I still have to get up for work at the same time, right? They don't change the start time at work, right? 8 a.m., you still have to be there to work, whether you're on daylight savings time or standard time, right? And then, of course, meal times, etc. If we're eating lunch at noon, when we go to daylight savings time, we kind of, I got to change my meal time to adjust to this time zone change, right? So, when we have these predictable things throughout the day, this is a routine. So routines conserve stressors on us. So when things become routine, the body is anticipating what's going to happen next. Hi there, I want to jump in real quick and tell you about my client Beth. She was getting 15 to 20 migraines and headaches per month. And as you can imagine, this was impacting her work performance and her confidence. She also has 2 small children, and she was starting to feel like she was a horrible mom because she had nothing left for them at the end of the day. But she reached out and she booked a free consult call with me, and after I asked her about her migraines and her health history, I felt confident that I could help her. I help women uncover the root drivers of their migraines and follow a step-by-step plan to dramatically reduce the frequency by up to 90% without adding more medication or taking a bunch of supplements. So we built her personal migraine map, followed the plan, and now she will get 1 to 2 migraines per year, which she uses ibuprofen to treat if she needs to, versus up to 15 to 20 per month when we first started working together that weren't responding well to any medication. She just reached out to tell me that she got a promotion at work, she's on top of her career again, and has been able to come off all of her migraine medication. But most importantly, she's a confident mom again, and she's attending birthday parties at Jump Zone with her kids and saying yes instead of saying maybe later. I've worked with women like Beth from all over the United States who were told, this is the best we can do. but they were still willing to dig deeper. So if you're serious about changing your migraine story, go to drlesliecaesar.com/apply or tap the link in the show notes. And on our free consult, we'll map out why your migraines keep coming back and the first 3 steps you can take over the next 30 days. I do cap new client spots each month, so if the calendar is full, the doors are closed for now. But if you're done feeling helpless and ready to do the work to heal, pause this episode for 30 seconds and book that consult call now. And so routines are very helpful, and our body wants some level of routine to be put into place because the body can then anticipate what's going to happen and it can prepare ahead of time for what's going to happen. So let's take a look at just like the sleep cycle. Most people are familiar that the sleep cycle is regulated by the 2 main hormones involved in regulating our sleep schedule are melatonin and cortisol, right? And so most people are aware that the melatonin, the production of melatonin starts to increase later and later in the day, right? And the more melatonin that's produced, the sleepier we feel. There's a 24-hour sort of cycle to melatonin. We don't want high melatonin at 6 in the morning when we've got to get up and get going and get the kids to school and get ourselves off to work, right? We want our melatonin to be low at that point of the day, right? But then, 9 o'clock, okay, time to wind down. I'm going to start getting ready for bed. I'd like to be asleep by around 10 so I can get up around 6, right? This is where we want the melatonin production to increase so that we feel sleepy and we can go to sleep and then we can stay asleep, right? So melatonin is a hormone that has a 24-hour peak and drop cycle, and that cycle allows us to maintain our sleep pattern, right? Our sleep rhythm. We can fall asleep, we can wake up. On the flip side of that is cortisol. So cortisol, again, is a hormone that has a 24-hour cycle. Cortisol sort of revs things up, okay? Cortisol is always called the stress hormone and it makes you fat, but cortisol has a productive purpose, okay? It's not just only about horrible, stressful things and, making you, have belly fat. Cortisol is a necessary hormone. Even if things are running smoothly and we don't have a care in the world, our body is still going to produce cortisol. It's not just a stress hormone or just something that is produced when there's a problem. So around 4 in the morning is when our cortisol peaks. And cortisol sort of helps rev everything up. It works with our thyroid hormone to sort of power our metabolism and keep us alert. So around 4 in the morning is when it peaks within the blood, so that around 6 o'clock when the sun gets up, when sun rises, we're starting to feel alert. We're feeling, roused from our sleep, and we have some get up and go to get up and start the day and be active. And then after that peak, the level declines throughout the day and it reaches its lowest levels in the end of the evening while we're first asleep. If it's 9 o'clock and we're trying to wind down to get to bed by 10 p.m., we don't want our cortisol spiking at that time. We're going to feel revved up and we're going to have a hard time getting to sleep, right? So these 2 hormones, one helps us sleep, one helps us wake up. They have a 24-hour cycle, facilitates all of that. This is a routine. Our sleep cycle, a lot of it is impacted by the sun rising in the morning and that light hitting our retina, setting off a whole host of signaling, but then also our sort of free will and how we approach our sleep routine and how we approach our bedtime. We actively choose to go to sleep at a certain time, right? That also reinforces these hormonal cycles. If somebody has a job, maybe they work second shift, and so they don't get off work until midnight, right? They're obviously not going to be going to sleep at 10 p.m. They're going to sort of through their own will and their own choice are going to alter that time frame of their sleep cycle, and the body will adapt to that. Okay, ideally the human sleep cycle, the human sleep rhythm is to wake up around the time that the sun rises. But we do, unlike other animals, we do have the ability to sort of override that with our free will. And so we can do that. We can work second shift. We can work third shift. There will be some consequences on us, okay, that we can again mitigate, but we can build a routine that is slightly off the sort of ideal schedule for a human, right? And so when we build that sleep routine, the body says, oh, okay, well, she's not going to be going to bed at 10 p.m. She's going to be going to bed at 2 p.m. So I'm going to change the hormonal cycles of these two hormones to facilitate that. And so we have that particular routine that's built up. We have a routine around when we eat, right? So at your job, right, your lunch hour every day is from 12:30 to 1:30. Well, your whole digestive tract adapts to that routine. Around 12 o'clock, it's like, okay, she's going to feed me here in about a half hour. We're going to start making the hydrochloric acid. We're going to start making the enzymes, right? The body becomes acclimated and anticipates what's going to happen. If it's just total chaos, every day is, mealtime is completely different than the next day, then when is our stomach going to make stomach acid, right? Just at the moment that we first swallow the food, it's not going to be very well prepared, right? Now, we can sort of eat out of the blue and our stomach can accommodate that, but that's an additional stressor on our digestive tract. So when we develop these routines in our life, whether it's a sleep routine, mealtime routine, all different types of routines that we have, our body acclimates and starts to anticipate that, starts to prepare ahead of time. This conserves stressors on the body. This is very critical for migraine sufferers to understand. When I talk about stressors, a lot of people think I'm talking about mental and emotional stress, right? The things that we call stress, like, oh, that meeting at work was really stressful. Or, I was really stressed out because I knew I had to talk with my sister about this thing that she does that really annoys me. And it was really stressful for me to have that conversation with her, right? This is what we think of. But I'm talking about stressors from a more holistic, a more fundamental perspective. Stressors are anything that is affecting our body, our physical body, or the mental and emotional component that we have. We have this physical body, 30 to 40 trillion cells, ton of biochemistry going on all the time, right? Our cells are alive and they're constantly doing things to respond and to adapt to the environment that we're in. Our physical body is continuously getting bombarded by stressors from the environment. As I'm sitting here recording this, right, my retinas are being bombarded by the photons of light coming off of the lighting that I'm using to light this. Those photons of light hitting my retina are setting off biochemical reactions within the retina itself, the optic nerve within my brain. All of those biochemical reactions, that's in response to the stressor of the photon of light hitting my retina. I'm sitting here in a chair talking to you. My muscles are keeping me upright. There's a stressor on my physical body of me sitting here in this chair talking to you. We are continuously bombarded by relatively minuscule physical stressors from the environment. That is sort of like the baseline stress level that our body is under. It is significant, okay? It's very significant. And we don't even think about it. We just totally take it for granted, right? When we're sitting in a chair, we're not appreciating the stress that's being generated when we're sitting in the chair. Then we have larger stressors from the environment, like an injury, an accident, an acute illness. If we get pneumonia, that's a pretty significant physical stressor on our body. If we get in a car accident and we get injured, that's a pretty significant physical stressor. And then we do have like stress, right? We do have interpersonal conflicts and, middle of the night, we're beating ourselves up because what we said to somebody earlier in the day, right? These things that we call stress, those are also stressors. When we have routines, okay, those routines conserve stressors. If someone is acclimated to the weather in Alaska in August, and then you abruptly ship them down to Phoenix in August, that's going to be a dramatic shift in their physical environment, in the climate that they're acclimated to. And so all of the biochemistry that's going to support good function in a 75-degree environment is going to be active. If you suddenly jerk that body into, 118-degree dry heat, okay, the body is going to be caught off guard. It's not acclimated to it. You have disrupted the routine. The more chaos there is, the more unpredictable things are, the more stressful it is on the body, because the biochemistry of the body has to be on it, right? Oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? I got to adapt. I got to adjust. Versus if we have a routine, okay, I kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. Now, if I have an occasional thing hitting me from out of the blue, well, I've got kind of a foundation already laid. It's going to be a lot easier for me to adjust to occasional unexpected things coming in from the environment versus total chaos. And when we have migraines, we're very sensitive to routines, right? The classic for migraine sufferers. Oh, I had to wake up early to catch a flight to go on vacation. Normally I get up at 6:30, but to catch that flight, we had to get up at 3:30 because we had to be to the airport. We were going to go to a show and go out to dinner and have a late night with friends, and I stayed up until 1:30 in the morning. I usually go to bed at 10. Oh my goodness, right? The next day I woke up, I had a horrible migraine. We are particularly sensitive to changes in our routine, right? And we call a lot of these things triggers. A lot of what are actually disruptions in the routine that the body is used to are things that we call migraine triggers. With daylight savings time, right, with the time changes, we're abruptly, right, we're kind of generating like an instantaneous jet lag without the fun of the vacation, right? And migraine sufferers are particularly sensitive to that because we're disrupting the routine that the body is in that's connected to all of the things that we connect to the clock or the time of day. So why are we so sensitive to all of these things? I want to go back to what I call the third principle. So if you've been listening to the podcast, I talk about what our body needs to restore itself back to health and maintain its state of health, right? Because when we are in a state of health, our body doesn't generate migraines, it doesn't generate other symptoms. We feel good. That's what we want. How do we get our body back into a state of health, and how do we maintain that state of health? There are three things that the body needs to do this. So I call them the three principles, okay? So the third principle is we have to restore our resiliency and vitality. So let me break this down. So I like to use the metaphor of we sort of have this compass needle. If it's pointing north, we're in the green zone and our body is not generating symptoms. We're in a state of health. We feel good. Unfortunately, that compass needle is continuously getting pushed down towards west by stressors. So the photons of light hitting our retina, the wind blowing, right? All of these stressors are continuously pushing that needle down towards west because stressors are sort of disrupting things, right? So they're pushing our needle down towards west. It's our own resiliency and vitality that pushes the needle back up. So we are continuously having to counter stressors. We are continuously getting bombarded by stressors. There's no way around that. We migraine sufferers, we try to bubble wrap ourselves and protect ourselves against stressors, or what we call triggers, right? Unfortunately, as we all know, you can't realistically do that. We have to have enough resiliency and vitality to counter the stressors that are continuously sort of throwing us out of balance. When that needle moves from north and starts going down towards west, picture the compass dial. There are symptom zones on that compass dial. So you and I have something in common, right? If you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you're like me. You're prone to migraines. So what that means is you and I have a little zone sort of on the northwest side of our dial. We have a little zone called migraine zone. And when our needle goes into that zone, you and I are going to get a migraine. Okay? So other people will have other symptom zones on their compass dial. Okay? So other people, they might have a zone called high blood pressure, right? So somebody's needle, their needle, they get pushed into their zone and it's their high blood pressure zone, blood pressure spikes. Now, there's a big difference between high blood pressure and migraines because you can have high blood pressure and not be aware of it. It's a symptom that doesn't generate a very obvious physical sensation in the person who has the symptom. Really high for most people to have any sort of inkling that something's wrong. Diabetes, high blood sugar, this is another symptom that isn't very physically obvious to people until a lot of damage, unfortunately, has been done to the body. Contrast that to migraines, okay? It's very, very obvious when you have a migraine, right? So those of us that are prone to migraines, it's very obvious to us when our needle has entered that northwest side of our dial, whereas it may not be that obvious to other people, not you and me, right? We know when we're going to get, we know even before the migraine comes crushing down, right? I call it the uh-oh moment. That minute, the second the needle starts to enter our zone and we have that uh-oh, something's brewing here, right? We avoid getting a migraine with our own resiliency and vitality, pushing the needle back up and out of the zone. So this is a phenomenon, this sort of interplay between stressors and our resiliency and vitality is very well understood, even if they don't have the words to articulate it, by migraine sufferers. And other people within the migraine community have also articulated this phenomenon. People will talk about the threshold, right? Or they'll talk about spoon theory. They'll talk, migraine sufferers will talk about, I've got to conserve stress, or I got to conserve my energy. I got to not go over my threshold. I can't give too many spoons away today, right? Or I'm going to get a migraine. We know this phenomenon because we feel it within our body all the time. And we talk to people that aren't prone to migraines, or they're not prone to these types of symptoms that are very physically obvious, and they kind of look at us like, what are you talking about, right? Hi there. I want to jump in real quick and tell you about my client, Beth. She was getting 15 to 20 migraines and headaches per month. And as you can imagine, this was impacting her work performance and her confidence. She also has 2 small children, and she was starting to feel like she was a horrible mom because she had nothing left for them at the end of the day. But she reached out and she booked a free consult call with me, and after I asked her about her migraines and her health history, I felt confident that I could help her. I help women uncover the root drivers of their migraines and follow a step-by-step plan to dramatically reduce the frequency by up to 90% without adding more medication or taking a bunch of supplements. So we built her personal migraine map, followed the plan, and now she will get 1 to 2 migraines per year, which she uses ibuprofen to treat if she needs to, versus up to 15 to 20 per month when we first started working together that weren't responding well to any medication. She just reached out to tell me that she got a promotion at work, she's on top of her career again, and has been able to come off all of her migraine medication. But most importantly, she's a confident mom again, and she's attending birthday parties at Jump Zone with her kids and saying yes instead of saying maybe later. I've worked with women like Beth from all over the United States who were told, this is the best we can do, but they were still willing to dig deeper. So if you're serious about changing your migraine story, go to drlesliecaesar.com/apply or tap the link in the show notes. And on our free consult, we'll map out why your migraines keep coming back and the first 3 steps you can take over the next 30 days. I do cap new client spots each month, so if the calendar is full, the doors are closed for now. But if you're done feeling helpless and ready to do the work to heal, pause this episode for 30 seconds and book that consult call now. We can restore our resiliency and vitality. We can improve our resiliency and vitality so that we can weather more stressors. We can raise the threshold. We can have more spoons to give away. This is what people are missing within the migraine community when people talk about threshold or triggers or spoons and these types of things. There's another aspect of the other side of the equation is our resiliency and vitality. So this is why I call it the third principle, and it's a critical component to restoring your health. If you don't restore your resiliency and vitality, you actually won't feel better. And this is why a lot of people are doing, quote unquote, all the right things. They've gone to other practitioners for help with their migraines, and they're not getting anywhere because people are not looking at, okay, where is the level of your resiliency and vitality, and what do we need to do to fill that bucket up and get it overflowing so that you have just a font of resiliency and vitality so that you can withstand all of these stressors that are continuously bombarding you. And then we get out of, the bubble wrapping ourselves and avoiding, what do I need to do to conserve? I was in that mind frame for a long time. It's no fun. I know this. We can get out of that mind frame and trust and know that our body has the resiliency and vitality to counter all of these stressors or counter what we call triggers. So what's happening when we go into daylight savings time, like we're going to do this morning at 2 a.m., right? We're sort of jumping ourselves into like a jet lag type situation, right? We're kind of disrupting the routine that our body is in. And that creates a stressor on our body. It's no joke to travel across time zones. You feel it. It generates stress because you're disrupting the routine, right? Our body is like, okay, I got my melatonin cycle. I got my cortisol cycle. I know when I'm going to eat. I know when I need to get my digestive tract revved up. I know what time I'm going to go in traffic to work. I know that, by 8:30, there's going to be a hustle bustle around, right? And our body is anticipating, I know when this is going to happen. I'm ready for it. I'm geared up. I got my enzymes. I got my signaling, right? I got everything going. And then whoop, all of a sudden, totally off, right? So now I'm, what? We're waking up now. We're eating now. Wait, I thought it was going to be quiet for another hour. Now it's too noisy. I'm not expecting all this noise, right? It generates even more stress on the body because not only is it the stressors hitting our body, the noise and so on, when we hear things, and that's a stressor, noise is a stressor. So not only are we being exposed to all of the stressors, but our body is now caught totally off guard. I didn't think you were going to do this now. I thought I had another hour to prepare, right? So it is very stressful on the body to disrupt all of these routines that have been laid down. And we do that twice a year when we do daylight savings time and we go back to standard time, just like you do it whenever you travel across time zones. For migraine sufferers, right, these types of stressors that most people, it's a pain to, I lost an hour and I wish I hadn't. People who are not prone to migraines, they're not so sensitive. They are still under the same stress. It's the exact same stress components that we are exposed to, but because they are not prone to migraines, when their needle gets pushed down, they're not going to experience the extraordinarily debilitating symptoms that a migraine is. So if you have robust resiliency and vitality, as your needle gets pushed down, you're going to push it right back up, and you're not going to notice it, right? You're going to breeze through that daylight savings time change. If you have diminished or lowered resiliency and vitality, all of those stressors are going to push your needle down. If you have a little bit of resiliency and vitality, right? It's like, I didn't get a full migraine, but oh man, I was on the borderline. I was on the edge for a couple days, right? And oh, I was just dragging, I was fatigued, I was irritable, right? More minor symptoms because we had enough resiliency and vitality to sort of keep the needle from crashing, but it wasn't pleasant, right? We had some symptoms. But if our resiliency and vitality is even more diminished, now the stress of this, of the disruption in the routine, right? The stress of all of that is going to push our needle down. But if we don't have enough to counter that stress, man, that needle can really get pushed down. And then again, if we're prone to migraines, we could get a full-blown migraine. If we're really, lacking resiliency and vitality, it could take days for our body to rally enough resiliency and vitality to push that needle back up. And this is where a lot of, really chronic migraine sufferers, this is where they really suffer. I've had clients that say, oh man, time zone change, it takes me like a week to recover from the time zone change. It's just, I hate it so much. I wish we didn't do it, right? Because they have chronic migraines, right? They're already, their needle is in their migraine zone, 20, 25 days a month. Well, now you have a big stressor and routine disruptor like a time zone change. And man, that just adds even more stress to the needle, pushes it down even more. Their resiliency and vitality was already diminished because their needle was stuck in their migraine zone for 20 days of the month anyway. It's going to take even longer for them to move their needle back up in the face of that time zone stress. And then over time, the body is going to readapt and it's going to reestablish all of those biochemical routines, right? So it's like, oh, okay, now what used to be 6 is now 7. So it's going to change the routine within the digestive tract. It's going to change the routine within the adrenals to produce cortisol, right? Our body is going to adapt, but it's got to make all of those changes now. Even making a change is a stressor on the body, right? So again, we have to have enough resiliency and vitality to counter all of the stressors that are associated with a time zone change. So I hope this helps you appreciate just how stressful it is, what we are going to experience tomorrow morning. But what I will say is, if you really struggle with time changes, there's hope for you, right? What we want to do is we want to rebuild and restore your resiliency and vitality so that you can weather this easier. This is something that we have to go through, and we want to have the ability to weather the stress of it. That's really the answer. We want to get that needle up to north or as close as we possibly can, and that is going to come from your own resiliency and vitality, and that can absolutely be restored. There are natural therapies that will add vitality. Our health supporting habits can add a lot of vitality to us, but the piece that's also missing that a lot of practitioners miss is that we can have sort of holes in our vitality bucket. I like to think of our resiliency and vitality. We sort of have this like vitality bucket, and we want to add vitality to the bucket, and we want that bucket overflowing, and we don't want any holes in the bottom of this bucket. But what happens is people have holes in the bottom of their vitality bucket and they don't know it. And so as they're trying to add vitality to their bucket, they're just draining the vitality out the bottom of the bucket. So part of the healing process for the vast majority of people is we have to identify, do you have any holes in the bottom of your vitality bucket that is draining your vitality unbeknownst to you? And the answer for most people is yes. And so we have to figure out, okay, what are the holes? How did they get there? And how are we going to patch them up for you? Okay, this is very individualized work. There are some common themes amongst those of us who are prone to migraines as to sort of what the holes are and how they got there. I've talked about this a little bit on other podcasts, but the process of really like honing in, okay, what are the specific holes that you have in your vitality bucket and how do we get that patched up? It's a very individualized process. And this is what makes, frankly, what I do with my clients also very, very unique, because the vast majority of practitioners, they're not thinking about resiliency and vitality, period. The practitioner is helping add, but we are sort of draining the vitality out the bottom as we're trying to add. So very good. I hope this helps. I hope by the time you listen to this, it's going to be past daylight savings time. So I hope you weathered the stress of going through daylight savings time well, okay? And if you didn't, please reach out. I would love to talk with you on a free consultation call. Let's talk about where you're at with your migraines, any other health concerns that you have. And then if I can help you, I will definitely tell you that. If I don't think I'm going to be able to help you, I will tell you that too. But if I do think that I can help you, we'll talk about what that looks like. So very good. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great weekend. Like I say, I hope you made it through daylight savings time. In November, we do it again, right? So we go back to standard time. So very good. I will talk to you guys soon.